All right, all right. We are back in the fucking game. Wait, I
No
need
one
to
knows we're back. It's actually the first time, I guess. But like,
no, I guess we're not.
it's not our third try. No, that's the
This is
first
our
one.
first try. Can you believe that we did it once in German, a second time in English? It crashed completely. The best part is I was listening to it with my girlfriend, and like we listened to maybe half of it, and afterwards, I go like, "So, did you like it?" And she goes, "Yeah, I mean, when like somebody's voice gets much higher because they don't want to tell you that, or that because
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
lying to
it's
you.
something.
Yeah, I like it's a start. You'll get better at it. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Okay, it was utter garbage. Thanks for the feedback.
Anyways, let's start. Eventually, we could start presenting ourselves. My name is Nico. I'm 24 years old, and I study computer science. I'm in my master's degree right now. Um, also, I work as an iOS developer on the side, and that says everything about my persona, I guess.
Yeah, all right. My name is Konstantin. I'm 23, and I also study computer science. I'm currently finishing up my bachelor's degree. And I was working as a web developer for quite some time, but I recently stopped to completely focus on my studies to get it done quickly and go into the interesting stuff in the masters. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So now, obviously, the first question would be, what are we even doing with this podcast? What's the main idea? What will we discuss, and what will be the topics?
Generally, we just want to talk about whatever interests us at the moment, or maybe sometimes discussing about like topics we really don't know yet. We will probably have like 2 or 3 questions to give it the like episode a little structure, kind of. Maybe you want to say a little bit about the structure or what we had in mind in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the idea was to have quite short podcasts. Currently, we had in mind to have podcasts that were or episodes that were about 30 minutes long max. Um, and so the idea was to have about 2 or 3 questions that should kind of lead us through this time. These questions might be a little bit more tech related, especially for this specific episode. It might be a little bit more tech related. However, in the future, it might also go in any other direction. It might be about any show we're interested into, or
Yeah, we could read like I'm just reading some out from our notes. Like it will be something like, why do I enjoy anime that much? Nico isn't familiar with them. Are custom keyboards worth it? And like similar things like that. How I got my dad into crypto, stuff like that. Yeah, just to give you guys an idea.
exactly. And yeah, I guess we can also jump right into the first question, which
Yeah.
is, why do we both like Apple, and how did we get there? How did we get such huge Apple fans over time? Was it just hype? Was it just what was it? Eventually, you could start because I think that your uh, story is a little bit more interesting than mine.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it obviously comes from my dad. He's a huge Apple fan. Also, like back in the days, he owns the first Mac, the first, like actually the first Mac, like not the first new gen Mac, the really old like boxy thing. He owns like every first device Apple ever made. It's in our like basement, and he's a massive fan. And he also like invested quite early, and he always like the moment I got my first PC, it was an iMac, and I got it on my birthday. And like for me at the beginning, it was kind of no question. Like to be honest, I didn't really know PCs existed when I grew up because I never saw one. The first time I saw something that was not from Apple was like when I visited friends, obviously. And so yeah, therefore I kind of just grew up with it, and I really learned to love it. And right now, like I obviously know I'm choosing what I think is the best for my workflow, and I still always go back to Apple. Yeah, but we can go further in depth later on.
Yeah. Okay. So, interestingly enough, my first start with Apple started with Constantine. So, a little backstory here. I've known Constantine now for 11 years, I believe,
Yeah.
something like that. And Well, at the time we were both still quite young. However, when I went over to Constantine's place, that's when I always saw Apple products around me. And already at the time, always thought that was quite cool, especially because I come out of a household where in particular, my dad has never been a fan of the whole Apple.
You could say
How do you
ecosystem,
call it?
I guess. Yeah.
Ecosystem? But exactly, yeah, the Apple ecosystem. He always hated it, and so I never really got in touch with it until I met Constantine, and I really started liking it a lot. And a few years later, I got myself my first iPhone, and I was at the time I remember I was fascinated by apps that were on the iPhone, or that anybody could just write for iPhones. So I wanted to get into app development, and that's why I also got myself a first Mac, and I've enjoyed it ever since. And also, the moment I started working with Mac, I could never go back because the workflow it provided me is just something that other systems cannot keep up with.
I think if you would describe it in one word, it's just like seamless. It has a kind of high entry cost because like the real deal basically just starts when you have a lot of Apple products, right? So if you only have a laptop, it's whatever. It's a laptop that's really really good. It's fast. It has good battery life, but at the end, it's just an expensive laptop. But if you add like a watch, maybe an Apple TV or a phone, you kind of create this ecosystem. I mean, most people are probably familiar. That's why you buy Apple products. It's because of the ecosystem, like features like handoff. You read an article on your phone, you put your phone down, it's on your laptop, like without much things you need to do, much steps in between. It just works. And like I think for you also, like I mean, you even work in that field. The simplicity is really really interesting, and it kind of allows you to focus on what needs to be done. Like I don't know, maybe it's just me being weird, but like the last few days we didn't had internet um on my laptop because I have two connections, and working on my PC, it's just horrible. I don't know what, but just from the UI you're less productive.
Yeah, I actually thought about this once, and the way I explained it, or what really sticks out to me, is that when you work with, in particular with the Windows, the animations are quite static. So the window will just pop up,
Yeah.
and furthermore, you don't have the amazing trackpad, for example, when you work with a MacBook, or in general, you don't have this sliding into a new page or something like that, and
Yeah, you could say there's less flow kind of.
there's less flow, exactly, and that makes the first huge difference. Um, Furthermore, well, the list is kind of endless, to be honest. From a development point of view, it's just wonderful because or it's just highly backed by the company. So if you have any kind of issues, you can literally write an Apple developer ticket. So they have like this developer technical support, and they will answer you within a day. We actually had an issue within the company, and we had no idea how to solve this problem. So we literally just wrote a ticket, sent it to Apple, and we got an answer within 1 day.
Yeah, they answer quite fast. Like yeah,
They
I
answer
I had
very
a similar
fast.
thing
Yeah.
back when I was like had some problems with iOS, and it worked out quite fast. Yeah, and also like what I also really like about like it's nice and it's not nice. For example, on my gaming PC, I love to tweak a lot of stuff, go into the BIOS and do really advanced settings. But like the fact that you can't do that on Mac is wonderful. Like I would never give my mom a PC as a home PC, but like with a MacBook, there is nothing you can ruin. It's like you can't do anything wrong, basically. It's
Yeah.
really hard to get it in a state where you would say it's destroyed. And like with a Windows PC, you just like delete system 32 basically, and your PC is bricked. Like
Yeah, I actually agree because a lot of the main argument that you always hear when it comes to people that are kind of against Apple is that it's so expensive, and the same things that you can do with a Mac or like with any Apple PC, you could also do with any Windows, and you would save at least 700 euros. Um, However, this is not completely true, because the way you can work with an Apple PC is oftentimes much more productive than it would be with any other PC, especially when your operating system is Windows. Now, obviously, I know when it comes to development that the best alternative when it comes to Mac OS is obviously, for example, Linux.
Like one thing I also really love about the Mac OS, like at work, I preferred, like, we could choose between Windows and Linux, and I went for Linux. And basically, if you know Mac, you can do a lot of stuff on Linux, and it's quite similar. For example, like the console, all the commands are basically the same, and for Windows,
Yeah.
everything's different. For example, just moving through your file system, it's so annoying on Windows. Why do they do it differently? Like, there's no reason. Like, it's so stupid.
But that's another huge issue. Like for example, I had this one uni project where we had to I had basically we had to create this web page, and I was in charge of the back end. And before we deployed it, I obviously just had it on GitHub, and my team partners had to pull it and start it on their own machine, and both of them were using Windows, and both of them had huge issues.
Your project is rigged from that point.
Yeah, it's true, but they both had huge issues to even get it started in the first place. Like, you don't even want to know how long it took them to get it started, because obviously it had a million dependencies. It was using MongoDB, so they had to install that like some weirdo ass way.
Did you also use Docker? Because Docker is a huge bitch with like Windows. Like back at work, my coworker needed to restart Docker every time you pushed a new Docker image. Every single time, it just stopped working, and you fully needed to restart the PC for it to work. Which is like, dude, imagine how much time you lose, how much that like actually costs you over a day. Like if you're working on a Docker image, you lose 1 to 2 hours by just doing stupid shit. It's so annoying. But like I think our the thing is, like, we will touch that on the side multiple times. I think when we're talking about development stories or whatever we do, we will always mention Apple. So it could be good to just go to our second point for today, because otherwise we will never stop talking about that. Because
That
obviously
is
we're both
absolutely.
quite fascinated.
Anyways, on to the next question, which is, or the next
Yeah.
topic, which is, what was our first project and that we personally worked on? Could be just to learn some framework or some new programming language, or it could be like an actual project that we wanted to work on, that an idea that we had that we wanted to start. And obviously, how did it go? Did it flop? Did it succeed?
I think I'll start on this one because mine will be pretty lame. We were talking before, and I couldn't really remember a lot of projects except the recent ones. But the first one, I started like using Java a bit before university started to get into it, but that's not really interesting. The first real project I did was to learn Vue.js, which is a really really nice framework on which I still really really love. And it was basically just you set up a front end, you set up a Node.js backend, you used Clarif AI. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's a really nice API where you can basically send pictures, and it sends you back if there's a human, where's the human. And all I basically did was a website where you can log in and identify faces on pictures, and like you had a border around it. And obviously, I think if I would look at my code now, I would probably cry. But back then, I mean, at least it worked and it did what it should, and it didn't look too horrible. So I think, I don't know, that's fine for me.
Dude, but honestly, the code thing, that's something that happens to me every year. Like every year when I look back to the code that I wrote the previous year, I start cringing very hard. It's just it's
That's true.
I don't know. It's either I either keep being shitty or or my progress is so extreme that like I literally get better exponentially. I don't know. I can't tell you.
Maybe
But
both.
it's yeah, maybe both. Yeah, it's like it's I saw it last time now at work, that I had this one project that or we had this one project that was on hold for a long time, and then I had to start working on it again. And I looked at the code, and It was terrible, and at first I thought, who wrote this bullshit? And then I realized, oh right, that was me.
Yeah.
So
We
what I
call those
started doing,
cringe commits.
yeah. So what I started doing is I started rewriting everything because it bothered me so much.
Yeah, I get behind it. I think, but that's also like if you realize yourself, that's really nice. But sometimes I just remember this one time really vividly, like when you're forced. Let's say the customer does only pay for X amount of time. You want to make it better, but you can't. So you commit something you're really insecure about and you would never commit it, but you're forced to. And then it's in this project and there's your name next to the line and you just want to disappear because it's so horrible, but you were forced to it. Oh, that's the worst. I have some of those commits in mind. It was just like, I was like, please give me 2 more hours. I can make this work. It's like, no, it need to be done now.
No, fortunately that never happened in my company, but um I guess it's because we have a little bit different kind of projects that are more on the long run.
Long term, yeah. That
Yeah,
makes
or
sense.
the long term. Anyways, what was my first project? I guess the most interesting first project that I want to talk about is my first ever iOS project. I basically started it just to learn how to actually work with Swift, and at that time UI kit. And basically the idea was, yeah, as easy as it sounded. It was just a way to memorize all of your spending. So like whatever you would spend, you could just type down the numbers, like, or type down the price of something.
That's probably the second most thing that people do after to-do lists.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Then you could like assign it to some category, and what else? I think that was pretty much it. And like there was like one of or two more weirdo as functionalities, but like none of them made sense. And I remember I tried to use the app myself at some point, and I used it for like 3 days, and then I was bored and it bothered me. And
I mean, I can say I tried it, and I can. Yeah, I remember it as being pretty bad. To be honest, like,
it was
pretty trash.
horrible. So
I mean, at the time, I was impressed, obviously, but it was
but
like
it was terrible. So like the first of all, and this is like the best part I did, when at least when it came to writing an app with UIKit, which was the, yeah, like the main Apple framework at the time, and I'm talking like at least 5 years ago or something. So basically, that's the way how you would have a view, how you would have, your buttons, how you would code your buttons, your text, your whatever, the animations that you would use this
it's
framework
basically
UIKit.
layouting, right? You just
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so, anyways, what one of the things that it has, so that the system knows where the button is actually positioned. It uses the so-called constraints, and for the constraint, what you have to give each object in your view is it somehow it has to know the height, the width, the x position, and the y position. That's how it knows exactly how big it is, how big the object has to be, and how it has to look like. Now, the first time working with constraints can be quite difficult. So, what I decided at the time was to just completely leave it out.
which sounds smart. Yeah, it sounds smart. Like I can't do it. Fuck it.
So, this might be an issue when devices have different sizes. And at the time already, iPhones had very different sizes. Basically, I created the design just by dragging and dropping everything into the screen for the iPhone 6. However, if you would use any device that was either smaller or bigger, it would just not work out. If you would have an iPhone 5, for example, you just weren't able to see like half of the buttons or half of the view.
Yeah, you don't
Or
need those buttons.
yeah, exactly. Or vice versa. If you would use an iPhone 6 Plus, there was just this huge white border on the bottom and on the right side.
That's a minimalist feature.
It wasn't my
So you
minimum.
focus better on the shopping spendings.
So that was my absolute flop. And the best part was that I was very insecure when it came to coding with Swift. and so I had a lot of repetitive code, like a lot. So I had like it was an app that had such little functionality, but it had like 3,000 lines of code.
You basically
And
wrote it twice.
yes. And to this day, I don't know how I got to 3,000 lines of code because all the functionalities I just mentioned, that was all. That
Yeah.
was literally all of it. Uh,
But like I think like for both of our examples, I'm not really sure of their like if you can consider them failures, because at the point we were just basically starting, it was the first thing we did. We weren't even like at a university to learn anything. It was basically just we tried it in our free time, and obviously it would turn out shitty. Like what else do you expect?
I think I'm not sure if I was in uni yet, but yeah, no, I definitely don't see it. I see the project itself as a flop, obviously, because I also think it's kind of funny that and normal that like first projects usually flop, especially when you learn some new framework.
And I think everyone has those.
Yeah, of course. So I just thought it was a funny story, but in the end, it actually like the project itself was a great introduction into uh,
How not to code.
iOS app development in my case iOS app development, and I learned a ton from it, and I'm glad I did it, especially because at first it was very very tough to get into the topic into the first place. In the first place, there were a lot of things I had to learn, and it was not, especially Xcode was not as intuitive as it might be today, for example. Also, UIKit was just or is a very very uh, old framework that is based on a very old technique, which was done much better now with Swift UI. But okay, well, no, that's a new topic that we'll get into another time, I think. Um, but anyways, I'm glad I did it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think everybody has this one project, and it's good that like we fail at some point. We
Like the good thing is that we get better. Like if every
yeah,
project would have
exactly.
been like
Like
that, it was horrible. But like, I mean, we learned from it. I guess no, it's fine.
honestly, yeah. To get back what I said before is that when you actually get to that point, and I like now that I rethink about it now, when you actually get to that point that you look at your code from a year ago and you actually start cringing, maybe that's a good thing, because maybe that means that you at least you improved, like you improved your coding skills, you improved your technological knowledge also to a certain degree, and so you can be actually proud of yourself that you learned a lot since then.
So you could basically say the learning from that is just write your code. Don't be scared. It will be shitty 2 years from now on, anyways. So just do it. Like nothing's
Yeah,
holding you back.
exactly. And also one more thing, there are a lot of shitty coders in this world, so don't be ashamed if your code isn't perfect.
You're one of them. Yeah. I
Anyways,
guess.
I think those are like some beautiful last words. Very, very philosophical and poetic and inspirational. You are not the only shitty coder out there. I
Embrace
would
it.
actually leave it at that for now.
Yeah,
This was a
100%.
lot of fun. I can't wait for the next episode. We'll see what we'll talk about next.